Above Snakes is a really good game that I'm enjoying a lot. Survival, crafting and exploring with that really unique twist on creating the biomes and the world that you want. It's a pretty chill game and the tutorial does a mostly good job in telling you exactly what you should be doing, but I'm going to give you my obvious tips anyway. I think these are some crucial explanations about stuff that you might have just missed or will hopefully help you along a little bit. Going over placements of your tiles, how or where to get certain resources, how important quests are and NPCs are for certain things, and tips about cooking, crafting and building up your base. I've got 100 days incoming of this, that's going to be on my 100 days channel, so please go and check it out. I'll leave the link in the comment section down below. And let's go, obvious things you should know while you're playing Above Snakes. Where you place your tiles is super important, and what type. That's really the key to success in making sure you're not travelling halfway across the map to get resources or running out of the stuff that you really need at certain stages. Of course, you can go ahead and delete your tiles once you make some ink, but you don't necessarily get back the tile placement. So you'll have to earn more XP by crafting, gathering resources to then get another tile to place. Of course, the more tiles you unlock, the more you're going to progress in the game while completing the missions and quests, and that will give you more access to different tiles and different biomes and resources. So it's technically called scouting, and the game gives you a warning that the longer you leave it before placing the tile, the longer it's going to take to scout and i.e. gain experience by crafting, gathering resources to get the next one. You have got a max of 3 as well, so it kind of wants you to just place a tile as soon as you get one unlocked. But I would say it's sometimes worth holding on to them a little bit longer, especially if you're close to completing a quest, to see if it unlocks a new tile that you could benefit more from. This is how you gain access to new biomes and new resources, so you don't want to be putting down 5 or 6 forests if you've got a bunch of prairie just about to drop. And for sure, some biomes are definitely more valuable than others, depending on what you're doing at what stage. So yeah, once you've placed about 7 tiles down, I'll then start thinking more carefully about where and what you really need. The forests are great for honey, so do you really need 5 or 6? Because at the moment in the early stages, honey isn't that mega used in certain things and it dehydrates you a lot when you use it in cooking. What you actually need more is the wax, so maybe limit how many forest ones you have. Of course, you do have more chance of deer and rabbits spawning, so if you're looking to eat lots of meat, but again, you can live off the land on just lots of berries. Effectively, the forest becomes almost a filler while you're waiting for the really good stuff, like the lakes where you can go ahead and get your tin from the outcrops, as well as the prairie where you're going to get cotton, hemp, and of course more foods like mint, vanilla and carrots. There are benefits to both ways that you might want to go. If you build lots of forest, you'll get your hunting skills up eventually once you get your bow and arrows, and then you'll obviously be doing stuff as well with your axe maybe in chopping down some creatures and more trees. Everything regrows, so it does take a while, maybe 2 or 3 days sometimes, for a tree to necessarily have the resources back in it when you go to shake it. And of course, new trees and new rocks and ores will also come back and respawn after a while. A big part of the placement also to remember is where you're building, don't forget to use all 4 sides. I set up exactly on the tile that I did pretty much the first part of the game, and I didn't really move, but you can move your house and location. You are going to lose some of your resources though when you dismantle any of your workbenches or build pieces, so you have to think carefully about whether it's really worth moving over just one square. Later on, you will gain the ability to fast travel and eventually get a hitching post. Until then, you have to rely on the NPC camps or places that have a hitching or horse, and that way you can teleport just between them. So it's always a good idea to build at least close to one of these. In the first parts of the game, it's going to be the trading outpost and it's going to be the village. But you will need carrots to also do this. The horse will pretty much start saying that you need to give him a carrot before you can fast travel. And they're slightly rarer in the prairies than some of the other resources, so you've got to think carefully about whether or not it's worth fast travelling. By the time I got to quite a midway point of the game, I really did feel like I'd made a lot of errors in where I placed certain things, and had way too many forest and snow biomes for what I really needed at the time. I'll probably mention a few here in this video, but look out for a resource guide where I basically list off where you can find all of the more important resources on what tile sets. But yeah, maybe think about creating a biome on each side. So in one direction you will have maybe the forest, and then that will lead on to snow because that's the only way you can really connect it. On one side you'll have the prairies, and then eventually that might lead onto farmland. And then you've got another direction for the lakes, so you can do lots of fishing and eventually maybe connect that over to farmland as well. As you progress through the story, you will be given different tile sets, so really make sure you are following the quests at all times. Like, sure, you can deviate and do what you want, but if you seem a bit stuck, the game's not really letting you progress to get a new tile, then check that you haven't got a quest that you haven't finished off. There's a couple of bottlenecks that if you don't complete the quest, you're kind of left wondering what you should be doing, because you can't get some of the resources to craft certain stations, etc. Which is normal, but yeah, if you're not really paying enough attention to the story, then that's why you're not really getting enough tile sets. For me, around day 41, I did start getting a bit frustrated because I was trying to unlock farmlands and it wouldn't give me a complete square of farmland, only small edges, and I was desperately trying to get clay, which is really super hard to get hold of. So you might have upgraded your workbench and seen that it needs clay to get to the next level, or you won't be able to get it until you get that farmland tile. Apart from that though, there was a good selection of all the other squares that I eventually were able to unlock. So as said, if you need wood, then put 2 forest tiles down. If you're looking to get more tin, then make sure you put plenty of lake, but just don't go overboard filling your whole map just because you've got some squares. It'll just create more work for you having to go across them to get from A to B. And part of the fun of the game is actually planning out exactly the perfect setup for how your biome on your world will look eventually. You can craft a cookbook that will keep track of your recipes just in case you don't want to keep messing around and putting all sorts of ingredients inside to see what it does. Slightly disappointed though that the cookbook doesn't automatically just open up when you are about to cook, so that you can just basically choose the recipe and it will add the ingredients for you. You still have to manually put in the right ingredients, as that means you're going to have to keep checking your book just before you're about to cook. There are so many combinations that you could do, you'd be surprised how much time you'll be wasting putting random items in just to see if it's going to give you a cooked meal or an actual item. Cooked meals are great, they will give you usually a mix of replenishing your water, your food, or boosting some of your other stats like your mental health and maybe your energy. But they tend to dilute a lot of the good uses of certain resources. Like coffee is really good for keeping you awake, and so when you don't make just regular coffee and mix it into just a regular food, you're kind of losing a lot of the benefit of it. A lot of the meats you can cook on their own and it'll give you a small amount of hunger, but if you put 3 in, then they turn it into basically kebab, which means you've got now 1 big meal instead of 3 individual ones. I found a lot of the time it's good to have a meal that can replenish all of your hunger, but it's usually a bit better to have just a little bit because you've got so many other foodstuffs, potions and soups that would also replenish some of your food. So make some of the kebabs and stuff where it involves 3 same ingredients, but I would say definitely check to see if it's really what you need. Food doesn't go off in above snakes, so you can experiment and just put it away in a storage container later when you unlock them. And do remember that some of the foods do give you a negative effect when they're actually cooked or added to other ingredients. Not all junk is useless. You'll come across a variety of different things in the chests and crates as well as barrels, and seemingly they're all destined to be sold at one of the NPCs. You'll come across a variety of almost junk, things like books, as well as candlestick holders and rusty lamps, but not all of it is useless or should be sold. Top things you want to keep are zombie teeth, as you'll be able to make necklaces with them that will give you some perks later. Books, which will help make bookcases to increase your home buffs and give you more chance of having a perk. And although it doesn't have huge amount of uses, you do find that you get the fish oil being used as a miscellaneous item. So you get the idea. Go ahead and obviously get some gold if you want to buy some stuff from the traders, as you can definitely get a quicker go of things picking up things like cloth and keys, but eventually you'll come across so many keys, you'll find so many in chests that won't be too much of a problem. Common keys at least anyway. I found I always had an abundance of certain resources like vanilla, but just like any game with traders, my rule of thumb is to always keep at least 5 of an item that looks like it's going to be used for something later, just in case you do need it. Some traders are definitely worth visiting more than others. I found the fisherman pretty useless. He didn't really have a lot going for him, other than maybe some of the fish oil to help you heal. And for the price that you get for fish that you catch, it's definitely not really worth selling any to him, unless they're uncommon or rare fish, i.e. they've got colours in the squares. Any normal fish that you get, save some and just use it for certain quests, or go ahead and just fillet it and use it to actually feed yourself. When it comes to things like fishing or gathering water or even shaking trees, make sure you do it completely until the hourglass pops up. As far as I know, if you shake a tree and only take 1 item from it or take a few drops from water, I'm not too sure if it will replenish. It only might replenish once you've taken everything. i.e. it will take a few days, but then you'll have more chances to go ahead and fish. Whereas if you only fish once, come back again a couple days later, fish again, you're still going to be just draining that same instance. That's what it felt like anyway. So always take all the resources from a tree or from water when you're doing it. It's not like you never need lots of water, because of course you're going to be cooking it to make it into water you can actually drink. And if you want some extra berries, well, don't forget to go ahead and chop the berries down after picking them, as you generally get 1 or 2 berries then, and there's usually always extra berry bushes that will grow. I mentioned how important it is to do the quests. That's because they often will unlock new tools and of course new tile sets to go and explore. Do note that a lot of their chests that they might have do respawn items over time. Not necessarily any of the barrels or crates, but if you do see any kind of chest, then generally you'll find new stuff in them every now and then. You'd also come across pieces of wood pile on some of the villages and outposts that you'll come across. So again, make sure you go back to some of these places to get some quick and easy resources. Trees can damage other resources, so line up your angle correctly and you will be able to get more quicker. Trees can also destroy ores and rocks if they're close enough to it as well, so get them angles right. And last thing about resources, some of the settlements and NPCs that you'll find, they'll often have more of the rarer stuff. So you find coffee beans in abundance more and thistle when you go to the village. I didn't realise this for ages, I guess I wasn't paying attention, but it does have 1 or 2 birch trees here. Maybe because some of the trees weren't in full bloom, that's why I didn't really recognise them as different. So yeah, don't worry or wait until you finally get to the birch biome, which is quite a bit later. You can actually get birch bark as well as some of the resin, as long as you've got a sharp enough axe to chop them. There of course is combat in Above Snakes, with zombies and more ferocious creatures you'll fight, but it's not exactly the most challenging game. It's more of a chill, farming, survival, crafting game. I've only died once in the first 9 hours, so unless they add some more difficulties later, don't sweat too much taking on enemies. Sure, you can be swamped at night time by 2 or 3 zombies, and that might be a bit difficult, but really you should have plenty of healing items that you can craft and make, and as long as you've got plenty of arrows, and you're always upgrading to the next available axe that you can, enemies really shouldn't be too much of an issue. And don't be too long in taking on some of the bosses or creatures. Again, as they're part of the missions, you'll be missing out on things like getting your own pet or unlocking new tiles and tools if you're kind of just bypassing. So use your dodge ability so you don't keep putting your weapon away when you're running away, but otherwise a lot of the creatures you can take out within 5 or 6 arrows once you get a good bow. Eventually of course you'll have unlocked the ability to get guns, but that's not for a good while. And lastly, when it comes to unlocking stuff, well, your workbench is how you're going to progress and get more materials and new crafting stations. So you need to upgrade it. Double check that you have got the materials or what you need to get to that next level. Also remember that the perks that you can choose, you can swap them in and out anytime you want. Your base and the building materials that you use all contribute to your perk score, and obviously the higher levels you get, the more chance you get of getting these extra perks. So do invest a bit of time in making some of the decorative items so that you can get your shelter levels up. I do believe as long as it's all built within the same square, you can definitely increase it all just by being close to each other. Whereas your crafting benches, they do need to be a bit more in range if you want to be using or pulling resources from them. I still found though that whenever I was going to craft something, I did have to directly go up to the bench, but it does look like that's meant to be the way it works, as a little symbol would often pop up on the top or bottom right of the screen showing that I was using that crafting bench. So hopefully they can really fix that or add it later so that in your square you can pretty much craft wherever you want as long as you've got all the benches within that area. You will unlock brand new build pieces as you progress, and so if you really want to make the house of your dreams, you might want to hold off until you get access to some of them, as it will just create a lot more work demolishing walls or doing more stuff, or maybe build in a completely new square your fancy new farmhouse. But do remember, when you demolish stuff, you are reducing your score towards your shelter score, so you've got a chance of actually not being able to use that perk as much. So don't go demolishing anything until you've got new workbenches if you're creating 2 bases on opposite sides of your map, or consider having a base for one thing and then your other base for another without having to worry about demolishing too much. And the golden but oldie, never craft too much. Sometimes you will come across quests or things you'll need where you need the raw resource, like you'll need raw iron ingots to unlock a lot of the tiles. In the early days it's just stone, and then other times you're going to need lots of cloth that you're going to have to actually put through the tannery from cotton. But effectively craft to what you need, don't just go mad and put everything in the smelter as soon as you get your iron ore or your tin ore. And that's pretty much it, just a very basic starter guide for Above Snakes. I'm really enjoying my time with it. I'm up to like day 55, 56, and looking forward to getting 100 days done. If you want to see that video, as I said, please go and check it out on my 100 days channel. It's going to be coming up very soon, and you'll probably still see me doing a few live streams over the coming weeks. I've got more guides incoming talking about all the resource unlocks, so do watch that as well. And I'm going to look at maybe setting up the definitive way to set up your squares. So until next time, Ratbags, I'll catch you later.